Picture this. You are 3 months into a massive project at work. The team is pulling all-nighters, the budget is stretched thin, and the stress is palpable. You're finally presenting your progress to senior leadership, and halfway through your slide deck, the vice president of marketing cuts you off. She looks at you confused and says, "Wait a minute. I thought the goal was to build a new mobile app for our premium customers. This looks like a complete redesign of our public website." Your stomach plummets. Your boss, who greenlit the project, is staring at the floor. The tech lead is already typing furiously on his laptop, probably updating his resume. All that time, all that money, all that effort potentially wasted because of a fundamental misunderstanding. This exact nightmare scenario, in one form or another, plays out every single day in companies across the United States. It happens in fast-moving tech startups in Silicon Valley, in massive construction projects in Texas, and in marketing campaigns run out of New York City. It's a universal problem, and it's a costly one. According to the Project Management Institute, a staggering 31% of projects fail to meet their goal. First, project. In the business world, a project is a temporary endeavor designed to create a unique product, service, or result. The key words there are temporary and unique. A project has a defined start and a defined end. Building a new software feature is a project. Once the feature is built and launched, the project is over. This is different from operations, which are the ongoing repetitive tasks a business does to keep the lights on. Processing payroll every 2 weeks is an operation. Answering customer service calls is an operation. Building a brand new customer service center in a new city? That's a project. It's a crucial distinction. The project is the act of creation. Operations are the act of maintenance. Now the second word, charter. This sounds old school, and it is in the best way possible. Think of the Magna Carta or a city charter. A charter is a formal document that establishes an institution and defines its rights, its purpose, and its privileges. It's a declaration. It grants authority. So when you put them together, a project charter is the formal document that declares your project's existence and, crucially, grants the project manager the authority to use company resources, money, people, equipment, to get the work done. It is the project's North Star. It's the source of truth that everyone can turn to when confusion starts to creep in. But why? Why go through the trouble of creating a formal document? Can't we just get started with a quick email or a kickoff meeting? You can, but you'd be starting a cross-country road trip without a map, a destination, or even an agreement on who's driving the car. The charter is what forces the 4 most important conversations that have to happen before a single dollar is spent or a single hour of work is logged. First, the charter solves the "why are we even doing this?" problem. This is the big one. So many projects get started based on a vague idea or a single executive's comment in a meeting. We should really improve our social media presence. Or our internal software feels a bit clunky. These are not projects. They are wishes. The charter process forces the team to translate that wish into a concrete business case. It demands an answer to the questions. How will this project make the company money? How will it save the company money? How will it reduce risk or meet a legal requirement? It forces you to go from a fuzzy goal like improve the website to a smart objective, like increase online sales conversion by 15% within 6 months by redesigning the customer checkout process. See the difference? One is a vague hope. The other is a measurable, specific target that you can build a plan around. The charter connects the project's work directly to the company's strategic goals. This is how you get buy-in. This is how you get funding. And this is how you protect your project from getting canceled halfway through when a new executive comes in and asks, "Why are we spending $500,000 on this again?" You can just hand them the charter. Second, the charter solves the "who's in charge here?" problem. I once consulted for a company where a critical project was failing because, believe it or not, 2 different departments thought they were leading it. The engineering team was building one thing, the product team was designing another, and they were giving conflicting instructions to the same developers. It was utter chaos. Why? Because nobody had ever officially named a single point of accountability. The project charter does this explicitly. It names the project manager, the person responsible for the day-to-day execution and success of the project. And, just as importantly, it names the project sponsor. The sponsor is usually a senior executive, who is the project's champion in the organization. They are the one who secures the funding, removes major roadblocks, and ultimately holds the accountability for the project's business success. The charter is the official handshake. the formal transfer of authority from the sponsor to the project manager. It's the document the PM can hold up and say, "I have been empowered to lead this initiative." Third, the charter is your #1 defense against the silent killer we mentioned earlier: scope creep. Scope creep is what happens when you agree to build a 2-bedroom house, and by the end, the client has somehow convinced you to add a 3rd floor, a swimming pool, and a helicopter pad, all for the original price. It happens one small favor at a time. Hey, while you're redesigning the checkout page, can you also just quickly refresh the logo? Since the team is already in the database, could we add a new reporting feature? Each request seems small, but they add up, destroying your timeline, blowing your budget, and burning out your team. The project charter defines the project's boundaries at a high level. It lists the major objectives and the key deliverables. It sets the initial definition of done. It doesn't mean the scope can never change, business needs evolve. But it means that when a change is requested, you have a baseline document to compare it against. You can say, "That's a great idea, but it's outside the scope we all agreed to in the charter. We need to go through a formal change control process to assess its impact on our budget and timeline." It turns a casual, scope-creeping conversation into a professional, structured business decision. And finally, the charter solves the surprise stakeholder problem. You know the one. Your project is 90% complete, you're about to launch, and suddenly the head of the legal department shows up at your desk and says, "Whoa, you can't launch this. This violates 3 major data privacy regulations. Didn't anyone talk to us?" Game over. The process of creating a charter forces you to identify your key stakeholders from day one. Stakeholders are anyone and everyone who is impacted by, can influence, or has an interest in your project. This includes your customers, your end users, your team, your boss, and the heads of other departments like legal, finance, security, and sales. By identifying them up front and getting their input for the charter, you bring them into the tent. You turn potential adversaries into allies. You uncover critical requirements and risks before they have a chance to derail you months down the line. So it's not just a document. It's an alignment tool. It's a clarification process. It's a political shield. It's the foundation upon which every successful project is built. It transforms a chaotic, vague idea into an official, authorized, and well-defined mission. It's the difference between setting sail into a storm with no compass and embarking on a voyage with a clear map to a treasured destination. Now you understand the immense power of the what and the why. You see the catastrophic, billion-dollar problems the project charter is designed to solve. But what actually goes in it? What are the specific sections, the key ingredients, that separate a weak, useless charter that just gets filed away from a powerful living document that actually guides a project to a successful finish? That is exactly what we are breaking down next. Let's think of it like building something from a kit, say a complex piece of furniture or a model airplane. The instructions don't just jump straight to step 57, attach the final piece. No, they start with a picture of the finished product and a list of all the parts you're supposed to have. The project charter is that picture on the box and that parts list all rolled into one. It's the foundational blueprint. To make this crystal clear, let's stop talking in hypotheticals and use a real-world example we can all understand. Let's imagine we're starting a project to open a brand new, independent coffee shop in our neighborhood. We'll call it the Daily Grind. This isn't just a dream. We're treating it as a formal project. The first thing we need is our project charter. So, what's the very first section? The absolute cornerstone? It's the project purpose or justification. This is the why. Why on earth are we spending time, money, and energy to open this coffee shop? This section isn't about what we're doing. It's about the reason for doing it. It's the soul of the project. A weak purpose statement sounds like, to open a coffee shop. That's not a purpose, that's a task. A powerful purpose statement for the Daily Grind would sound more like this. The downtown district of our city has experienced a 30% growth in new residential units over the last 2 years. Yet it lacks a central community-focused space for residents and local professionals to connect. This project aims to fill that market gap by establishing a high-quality coffee shop, the Daily Grind, which will serve as a community hub, stimulate local foot traffic for surrounding businesses, and capitalize on the underserved morning and midday beverage market. See the difference? It's night and day. That statement doesn't just say what we're doing. It answers the crucial business questions. It connects the project to a larger goal. It justifies the expense and effort. When things get tough 6 months into the project, and they always do, this is the paragraph the team comes back to. It's the North Star. It reminds everyone why their work matters. Okay, so we have our why. The next logical component of the charter is defining what success actually looks like in a way we can measure. This leads us to the section on measurable project objectives and related success criteria. If the purpose was the why, this is the what. Specifically, what will we have achieved when we pop the champagne and declare this project a success? The key word here is measurable. This is where so many projects go off the rails. They have vague, fuzzy goals like make a popular coffee shop or be profitable. What does popular even mean? When do we need to be profitable? A great charter smashes ambiguity with concrete, measurable targets. We often use the SMART goal framework here: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So for the daily grind, our objectives wouldn't be sell a lot of coffee. They would be: 1. Launch and open the daily grind to the public by October 1st of this year. 2. Achieve an average of 150 customer transactions per day within the first 6 months of operation. 3. Secure a 4.5-star or higher average rating on major review platforms like Google and Yelp within the first year. 4. Reach operational break-even where revenue equals expenses within 12 months of opening. Each one of those is a clear finish line. We can track our progress against them. On October 2nd, did we open? Yes or no? 6 months in, we can pull the sales data. Are we hitting 150 transactions? Yes or no? There is no gray area. This section turns a vague dream into a set of targets. It's the scoreboard for the entire project, and it's defined before the game even begins. Now that we know why we're doing the project and how we'll measure success, we need to get a bit more specific about the thing we're actually creating. This brings us to the next section: high-level requirements. Requirements are the capabilities the final product must have. What must our coffee shop be or do to meet those objectives we just set? Think of these as the non-negotiable features. They're not the tiny details yet. They're the big, important characteristics. For our coffee shop, the high-level requirements might look like this. Asterisk: the facility must have seating for a minimum of 40 customers. Asterisk: the menu must offer a full range of espresso-based beverages, drip coffee, and non-coffee alternatives. Asterisk: it must provide free, high-speed Wi-Fi for all customers. Asterisk: the shop must comply with all city health and safety codes for food service establishments. Asterisk: it must utilize a modern point-of-sale system capable of tracking inventory and customer analytics. These are the core attributes. If our final coffee shop can't seat 40 people, or if the Wi-Fi doesn't work, we failed to meet the requirements, even if we opened on time. This section is critical because it starts to put a fence around the idea. It clarifies what we are promising to deliver. It prevents a situation where the project sponsor says, "Wait, I thought we were going to have a full-service kitchen and a drive-through." If that wasn't a requirement listed in the charter, it's not part of the project. This leads perfectly into our next essential section, which is the high-level project description and project boundaries. This part paints a picture of the project itself, the work we're going to do. It might briefly describe the major phases, like Phase 1, site selection and lease negotiation. Phase 2, design and permitting. Phase 3, construction and build-out. Phase 4, staffing and grand opening. But the most powerful part of this section is defining the boundaries. It's where you explicitly state what is in scope, and even more importantly, what is out of scope. This is your number one defense against the silent killer of all projects: scope creep. That's when little requests and "oh, can we just add this one thing" slowly inflate the project until it collapses under its own weight. For the daily grind, our boundaries section might state: asterisk in scope asterisk securing a physical location, renovating the interior, purchasing all necessary equipment, hiring and training initial staff, and marketing for the grand opening. Asterisk out of scope asterisk developing a mobile ordering app, establishing a catering service, or planning for a second location. This is a game changer. 6 months in, when someone on the team says, we should really start building an app for people to order ahead, the project manager can point directly to the charter and say, "That's a fantastic idea for a future project, but it is explicitly out of scope for this one." Our mission right now is to get this first store open successfully. It doesn't mean those other ideas are bad. It just means they aren't part of this project. The charter protects the team from distraction and keeps them focused on the original finish line. So let's recap where we are. We've established the why with our project purpose. We've defined the scoreboard with our measurable objectives. We've listed the non-negotiable features in our high-level requirements. And we've drawn a line in the sand with our project boundaries to prevent scope creep. This is already an incredibly powerful foundation. We've moved from a vague idea, "Let's open a coffee shop," to a well-defined mission. But there's a huge piece of the puzzle missing. We've talked about the what and the why, but we haven't talked about the who. Who has the authority to make decisions? Who are the key players we need to keep happy? And we haven't touched on the two things that keep every project manager up at night: the risks that could derail everything and the cold, hard numbers, the budget. How do we identify the people who can make or break our project? And how do we plan for the inevitable storm clouds on the horizon? That's where we go next. The people who can make or break our project are called stakeholders. And this is a word that gets thrown around a lot in business, but it's stunningly simple. A stakeholder is anyone, a person, a group, an organization who has a vested interest in your project. They can be affected by it or they can affect it. They are the human landscape your project is built on, and if you don't map it out, you're guaranteed to stumble into a sinkhole. Think about building a custom home. Who are the stakeholders? Well, obviously you have the client, the family who will live in the house. They are your primary stakeholders. Their happiness is the whole point. Then you have the project sponsor, maybe it's the bank providing the loan, or the senior partner at the construction firm. They hold the purse strings and have the ultimate authority. But the list goes way beyond that. What about the architect who designed it? The general contractor? The subcontractors for plumbing and electrical? They all have a stake in the project's success. What about the city permit office? They don't care what color you paint the living room, but they have immense power to shut your entire operation down if you don't follow code. They are a stakeholder. What about the neighbors on either side of the property? The ones who have to listen to saws and hammers at 7 in the morning for 6 months? They can't stop you. But an angry neighbor can make your life miserable with constant complaints. They are stakeholders. Even the supplier of that rare Italian marble the client wants for the countertops is a stakeholder. If their shipment is late, your whole schedule gets thrown off. The project charter doesn't list every single one of these people by name. That's for later. The charter identifies the key stakeholders, the big ones, the VIPs whose support is non-negotiable, and whose opposition could be a death sentence for the project. This means listing the project sponsor, the main client, and any key department heads or external regulators. And here's the secret sauce project managers use. They don't treat all stakeholders the same. They perform a quick mental calculation, plotting each stakeholder on a simple grid based on two things: their power or influence over the project, and their interest or how much they care about the outcome. Let's go back to our house building project. The client family? High power and high interest. You need to manage them closely with constant communication, weekly check-ins, and a deep understanding of their needs. The project sponsor, the one with the money, also high power, high interest. They need to be kept in the loop on everything, especially the budget. Now, what about the city permit office? They have extremely high power. They can literally stop you in your tracks. But their interest is very low. They don't care about your project specifically. They just care that you follow the rules. So you don't need to send them weekly updates on your progress. You just need to keep them satisfied. Give them the exact paperwork they ask for on time and don't cause any trouble. What about those neighbors? They have high interest, the construction is happening right next door, but very low power. They can't really stop you. For them, the strategy is to keep them informed. A simple heads up before a big, noisy delivery or before the foundation is poured can turn a potential enemy into a friendly acquaintance. It's about proactive communication. Finally, you have someone like the general public who just drives by the construction site. They have low power and low interest. You just monitor them. You don't need to do much at all. By identifying your key stakeholders in the charter and thinking about where they fall on this map, you're not just making a list. You're building a communication strategy from day one. You're preemptively defusing political landmines and turning potential adversaries into allies. You're acknowledging that projects aren't just about tasks and timelines. They're about people. And just as we map out the people, we must also map out the potential problems. This brings us to the next critical section of the charter: high-level risks. Every single project, no matter how well planned, is a ship sailing into a sea of uncertainty. There will be storms. There will be unforeseen currents. A risk is simply one of those potential storms. It's an uncertain event that, if it occurs, will have an effect on your project, usually a negative one. The purpose of the risk section in a project charter is not to list every single thing that could possibly go wrong. If you did that, the document would be 1,000 pages long and nobody would ever sign it. The goal is to identify the major, high-level risks, the big scary ones, the icebergs. It's about showing your sponsor and your team that you are not naive. You are a realist. You have your eyes wide open. Let's stick with our house building project. What are the big risks? First, there's a huge schedule risk. What if we have a month of non-stop, record-breaking rain right after we dig the foundation? The entire site turns to mud, and we can't do anything. The whole project could be delayed by 4 to 6 weeks. That's a major risk. Then there's a budget risk. What if the price of lumber, a key material, suddenly spikes by 40% due to a global supply chain issue? Your entire budget could be blown. There's a resource risk. What if your master electrician, one of only a few in the area qualified for this kind of custom work, gets a better offer and quits halfway through the job? Finding a replacement could take weeks and cost a premium. And the mother of all risks, the one we talked about earlier, scope creep. What if the client, after seeing the walls framed, decides they want to add a second-floor balcony that wasn't in the original blueprints? That's not a small change. It's a project-altering risk that impacts the budget, the schedule, and even the structural integrity. In the project charter, you list these top 5 to 10 risks. And for each one, you do something incredibly important. You briefly describe a potential response. You're not writing a detailed contingency plan yet. You're just planting a flag. So for the weather risk, your charter might say, risk, unseasonable, prolonged rainfall delaying foundation work. Initial response, build a 3-week weather contingency buffer into the project schedule. Monitor long-range forecasts and have water pumps on standby. For the lumber price spike, risk, significant increase in raw material costs. Initial response, secure a price lock agreement with the supplier in advance. Explore alternative, cost-effective materials with the client as a backup. For the client wanting a balcony, risk, major scope changes requested after key milestones. Initial response, implement a strict change control process, requiring all changes to be formally submitted, evaluated for cost and schedule impact, and approved in writing by the sponsor before any work begins. Do you see the power in this? The moment you write these down, you transform them. They are no longer terrifying phantoms lurking in the dark. They are identified adversaries that you have a plan for. It tells your project sponsor that you've thought about what happens when things go wrong. Starts a conversation. The sponsor might look at the lumber risk and say, you know what, that's a real concern. Let's add an extra 5% to the budget as a contingency fund just in case. Suddenly, a future crisis becomes a manageable problem. You've moved from being reactive to proactive. Answering what if before you're in the middle of a disaster is one of the most valuable things a project manager can do. And it starts right here in the charter. By identifying your key stakeholders and your major risks, you've created an early warning system. You know who you need to keep happy and you know what icebergs to watch out for. You've wrapped your project's goals and scope in a protective layer of human understanding and pragmatic foresight. You now have a clear destination and a map of the treacherous terrain. But even the best map is useless if your ship has no fuel and no crew. You need resources. You need money. You need a budget. How do you create a realistic budget for something that hasn't even started? How do you secure the funding and get the final green light to actually begin? That's the engine of the project. And it's the next piece of the charter we need to build. Let's talk about money, because at the end of the day, that's what this all comes down to. Ideas are free, but execution costs cash. And this section of the project charter, the budget, is where more projects die than anywhere else. It's where dreams meet the harsh reality of a spreadsheet. Staring at that blank total cost cell can feel like staring into an abyss. You're being asked to predict the future, to put a single concrete number on a complex, sprawling effort that hasn't even happened yet. Get it too high, and your project is dead on arrival, laughed out of the boardroom as a fantasy. Get it too low, and you're setting yourself up for a slow, painful death later, constantly begging for more resources as you bleed out, eventually failing and damaging your reputation. No pressure, right? The temptation, the thing most people do, is they just guess. They pull a number out of thin air that feels right. They'll say, oh, building an app like this probably costs around $50,000. And that number, that single guess, becomes gospel. It gets repeated in meetings, it gets put into the charter, and the entire project is now shackled to a complete work of fiction. This is the single fastest way to guarantee failure. Because a budget isn't a guess. It's an evidence-based argument. It's a story you tell with numbers, proving you've done your homework and that the investment is sound. So, how do you stop guessing and start calculating? You become a detective. Your first move is to put on your detective hat and grab a magnifying glass. This is called a bottom-up estimate. Instead of looking at the project as one giant intimidating blob of work, you break it down into the smallest possible pieces. You don't estimate the cost of building a house. You estimate the cost of the foundation, the lumber for the framing, the drywall, the copper pipes, the roofing shingles, the windows, the electrician's hourly rate, the plumber's fee. You get quotes. You do the research. For our Phoenix Coffee app, you wouldn't guess the cost of the whole app. You break it down. What's the cost for a user interface designer for 80 hours? What's the cost for a database developer for 120 hours? What are the server hosting fees per month? What is the cost of the license for the payment processing software? You break it down into dozens, even hundreds of tiny, manageable, and most importantly, estimable pieces. Then you add them all up. This is the most accurate way to budget, but it's also the most time-consuming. It requires a deep understanding of the work. But when you present this budget, you're not presenting a guess. You're presenting a mountain of evidence. Every line item is a fact you can defend. But what if you don't have time for a full-blown detective investigation? What if you need a number, a ballpark figure, right now? You switch hats. You stop being a detective and you become a historian. This is called analogous estimating, which is a fancy way of saying you look at the past to predict the future. You go into your organization's archives and you ask, have we ever done anything like this before? Maybe last year, the company built a different app, the Speedy Dry Cleaning app. You pull up that project's charter. You look at its final budget. You see that it took 6 months and cost $80,000. Now you have a starting point. It's not a wild guess. It's a comparison. But you have to be careful. You have to ask, how is my Phoenix Coffee app different from the Speedy Dry Cleaning app? Maybe the coffee app needs a complex loyalty point system that the other app didn't have. So you take the $80,000 figure from the old project, and you adjust it upwards to account for that new complexity. Maybe you add another $20,000. This method is fast. It can give you a decent ballpark figure in a matter of hours, not weeks. But it's only as accurate as the old project is similar to your new one. If the old project is a perfect match, your estimate will be good. If it's like comparing building a shed to building a skyscraper, your estimate will be garbage. Now for the third and final tool in your arsenal. Sometimes you're not a detective or a historian. You're a mathematician. This is called parametric estimating. This works when you have reliable data and repeatable units of work. For example, a construction company might know from hundreds of past projects that it costs them, on average, $200 per square foot to build office space. So, if a client wants a 10,000 square foot office, they can create a very accurate budget in about 15 seconds. $200 times 10,000 square feet is $2 million. Done. In the software world, you might know that it costs your company on average $5 in marketing to acquire one new app download. If your project goal is to get 100,000 downloads, you know you need $500,000 for your marketing budget. The power of parametric estimating is its scalability and speed, but it requires one thing: good, clean historical data. You can't use it if you don't have a proven cost per unit. So you have these three methods: the detailed detective work of bottom-up, the historical comparison of analogous, and the mathematical precision of parametric. The secret that pro project managers know is that you don't just pick one. You use them together to cross-check each other. You might start with a quick analogous estimate to see if the project is even in the realm of possibility. Then, you build a detailed bottom-up estimate to get to the real defensible number. If your bottom-up total is $95,000, and your analogous estimate was $100,000, you can feel pretty confident you're in the right zone. They validate each other. But we're not done. Because no matter how perfect your estimate is, you're forgetting one crucial thing: reality. Things go wrong. The price of a key software license suddenly doubles. A key developer gets sick for 2 weeks. A new feature that was non-negotiable is suddenly added by a senior executive. Your perfectly calculated budget is now broken. This is where you add the most important line item in your entire budget: the contingency reserve. This is not slush fund. It is not padding. It is a calculated buffer, your project's insurance policy against what we call the known unknowns. You know some things will probably go wrong, you just don't know what they will be. A standard contingency is often between 10 and 20% of your total project cost. So if your bottom-up estimate is $100,000, you add a $10,000 to $20,000 contingency reserve. This fund is controlled by the project manager, and it's used to handle these unexpected, but foreseeable problems without having to go back to the sponsors, hat in hand, begging for more money. It shows you're a professional who plans for reality, not just for the best-case scenario. Finally, with your evidence-based, bottom-up estimate and your professional contingency reserve, you have your final number. Let's say it's $120,000. Now you have to get it approved. And you do that by connecting it back to everything else we've already built in the charter. You don't just ask for the money, you present it as an investment. You say, we are asking for an investment of $120,000 to achieve our project goal of increasing customer retention by 15%. Based on our business case, this will generate an estimated $400,000 in new revenue over the next 2 years. You see what happened there? You just changed the conversation. You're no longer talking about a cost. You're talking about a return. You framed the budget within the context of the immense value the project is going to deliver. You've made it a business decision, not just an expense line. And with that, you get the signature. The funding is approved. The money is allocated. The engine is built, it's full of fuel, and it's ready to roar to life. It's a huge moment. But now comes the most critical question of all. You have the official map in the project charter. You have the fuel in the approved budget. But who has the keys to the car? Who has the actual authority to start the engine, to spend that money, and to tell people what to do? Who is really in the driver's seat? Because without that, you're just sitting in a very expensive, fully fueled car that's going absolutely nowhere. That person, that single point of accountability, is the project sponsor. Think of them as the owner of the car. They might not be the one driving it every day, but they hold the title, they pay for the insurance, and most importantly, they have the only set of keys. The project charter is the document where the sponsor officially puts those keys into the ignition and turns them. Their signature on that charter is the sound of the engine roaring to life. It is the single most important act of authorization in the entire project lifecycle. It's the moment a good idea transforms from a conversation in a conference room into a funded, legitimate, and approved corporate initiative. The sponsor is typically a senior leader, a director, a vice president, someone with enough clout in the organization to knock down walls. When the project needs more money, the sponsor fights for it in the budget meetings. When another department is dragging its feet and holding up progress, the sponsor makes the phone call that magically gets things moving again. They are the project's champion, its protector, its ultimate source of power. But if the sponsor owns the car and holds the keys, who's actually behind the wheel, navigating traffic and pushing the pedals? That person is the project manager. And this is where the charter performs its second critical function. It's an act of delegation. The sponsor, by signing the charter, is publicly and formally handing the keys to the project manager and saying, "You are now in control of this vehicle. I am giving you the authority to drive it to our destination. I trust you to manage the fuel, follow the map, and lead the team to get us there safely and on time." This is a concept that so many new project managers fail to grasp. Your authority doesn't come from your job title. It doesn't come from being persuasive or well-liked. In a formal project setting, your real authority comes directly from the project charter. It's like a limited power of attorney. It's a document that says to the entire organization, for the duration of this project, and only in matters concerning this project, this person, the project manager, speaks with the authority of the sponsor. When they ask for resources, they are asking on my behalf. When they assign tasks to team members, they are doing so with my blessing. Without this, a project manager is basically just a professional beggar. They have to go around asking people for favors, hoping that team members from different departments will have time to help, and praying that other managers won't pull their people onto something else they deem more important. It's a recipe for failure. The charter changes the game entirely. It transforms the project manager from a coordinator into a leader. It gives them the right to direct resources, to assign work, and to make critical day-to-day decisions. So, what does this section of the charter actually look like? It's usually very simple, but every word carries immense weight. It will clearly name the project sponsor with their title. For example, Jane Doe, Vice President of Marketing. This immediately tells everyone reading the document where the project's power comes from. It's not just some random idea. It's a strategic initiative backed by a VP. Then it will name the project manager, John Smith, Senior Project Manager. This anoints the person responsible for the daily execution. But here's the pro tip, the part that separates a basic charter from a truly effective one. A subsection called Project Manager's Level of Authority. This is where the sponsor defines the PM sandbox. It preemptively answers the questions that can grind a project to a halt. For instance, it might state that the project manager has the authority to approve any single expenditure up to $5,000 without needing further approval. Anything over that, they need the sponsor's sign-off. This is brilliant. It means the PM doesn't have to chase down a busy VP to buy a $2,000 piece of software, preventing a week of delays. It might also say the PM has the authority to approve minor changes to the project scope, as long as they don't impact the overall budget or final deadline. This empowers the PM to make smart, tactical decisions on the fly without getting bogged down in bureaucracy. It defines the boundaries. It tells the PM exactly how long their leash is, which gives them the confidence to run, and it tells everyone else that the PM isn't going rogue. They're operating within pre-approved limits. Let me tell you a quick story to show you why this is so powerful. I once coached a new project manager named Sarah. She was brilliant, organized, but a little timid. She was running a software project and needed a developer, Mike, to work on a critical feature. Mike's functional manager, a guy named Dave, walked by and told Mike to drop what he was doing and work on a fire drill for his own department instead. Mike was caught in the middle. Who does he listen to? His direct boss, Dave, who does his performance reviews? Or this project manager, Sarah, who he was only assigned to temporarily? In most companies, Dave wins that fight 10 times out of 10. Sarah's project would have been delayed for weeks. But this time was different. Sarah had a well-written project charter. She calmly walked over to Dave's desk, not to argue, but to show him the charter. She pointed to the sponsor's name, the chief technology officer of the entire company. Then she pointed to her name as the designated project manager. And finally, she pointed to the line that gave her authority to direct and prioritize the work of all assigned project resources. Dave read it. He saw the CTO's signature at the bottom. The conversation changed instantly. It was no longer about his priority versus her priority. It was about his priority versus the CTO's priority. Dave looked at Mike and said, "Keep working on Sarah's feature. We'll handle the fire drill later." Sarah didn't win because she was a better negotiator. She won because she had a document that established the political reality of the project. The charter was her shield and her sword. It took the personal conflict out of the equation and replaced it with formal, documented authority. That is the true power of this section. It's not just about names and titles. It's about drawing clear lines of power and preventing the turf wars and political battles that kill so many projects before they even get started. So you've got the sponsor with the keys and the project manager in the driver's seat. The engine is running, but a car doesn't drive in a vacuum. It drives on roads through cities with other cars and pedestrians all around it. Who are all these other people? Who are the passengers in your car, the police directing traffic, and the angry drivers you might cut off by accident? Getting that wrong can cause a crash just as easily as running out of gas. And that's where stakeholders come in. So what exactly is a stakeholder? The fancy definition is any person, group, or organization that can affect, be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by a project. But let's be real, that sounds like it was written by a robot for a textbook. Let's go back to our road trip. A stakeholder is literally anyone who has a stake in your trip. Anyone who cares if you get to California, or how you get there. This isn't just the people in the car with you. It's way bigger than that. Think about it. You've got your best friend in the passenger seat, navigating. They are a stakeholder. You have two. In the project world, these are your external stakeholders. This could be a government agency that regulates your industry. If you're building a new medical device, the FDA is a massive stakeholder. You have to follow their rules to the letter. It could be your end users, the customers. If you launch a new website that your customers hate, your project is a failure, even if it was on time and on budget. Your charter needs to acknowledge who these groups are. Who are the regulators we must satisfy? Who is the end user we are building this for? So, why does the project charter force you to sit down and make this big list of people? Sounds like a lot of work. Because a project's failure often has less to do with technology or timelines and more to do with people. A project is a human endeavor, and humans are complicated. Making this list, the stakeholder register, does two critical things. First, it forces you to think beyond your own little bubble. Stops you from having tunnel vision. It's so easy to just focus on the people in your car, on your immediate team. But if you don't consider the gas station attendant, the police officer, and the other drivers, you are driving blind. You are setting yourself up for a surprise roadblock or a nasty crash. Second, and this is the most important part, this list becomes the foundation of your communication plan. You don't talk to everyone in the same way. You wouldn't give your dad, the sponsor, the same level of detail about your snack situation as you would your friend in the back seat. And you wouldn't talk to the police officer the same way you talk to your best friend navigating. Once you have your list of stakeholders, you can start to map them out. You can ask 2 simple questions for each person or group. 1. How much power or influence do they have over my project? Can they shut it down or just slow it down a little? 2. How much interest do they have in my project? Do they care deeply about the outcome? Or is it just a minor thing on their radar? Your sponsor, your dad? High power, high interest. You need to manage his expectations closely. Keep him updated regularly. Make sure he's happy. The friends in the back seat? High interest but low power. They can't cancel the trip, but if they're miserable, they can make the whole ride unbearable. Your job is to keep them informed and happy. The gas station attendant? Low power, low interest. You just need to be professional and efficient with him. The police officer? High power but probably low interest unless you break a rule. Your job is to follow his directions, to satisfy his requirements. By listing your stakeholders in the charter, you are creating a map of the human landscape of your project. You are identifying all the potential allies who can help you and all the potential risks that could derail you. It's an exercise in empathy and strategy. You are planning who you need to talk to, what you need to tell them, and how often you need to check in. Let's go back to our website project. The charter would list the CEO as the sponsor. High power, high interest. Needs weekly summary emails. The web development team. Low power, high interest. Needs daily stand-up meetings to coordinate tasks. The head of the sales department. Medium power, medium interest. He doesn't care about the font you use, but he absolutely cares that the Request a Demo button works flawlessly and sends leads directly to his team. You need to consult with him on that specific feature. The end customers. Low power individually but high power as a group. Their interest is the whole point of the project. You need to keep their needs front and center in every decision. Without this list in the charter, you're just guessing. You might forget to talk to the head of sales until 2 days before launch. Then he sees it and says, "Wait, that's not how we handle leads. This is going to break our entire process." And just like that, your project is delayed by weeks and your credibility is shot. The stakeholder section of your project charter is your defense against these kinds of people problems. It's the political map for your journey. It ensures you've thought about everyone who has a stake in your success. It's the difference between a smooth, collaborative journey and one filled with arguments, wrong turns, and angry phone calls. So you've got your car, your destination, your budget, and your timeline. And now you have a crystal clear picture of every single person who matters to your trip. You know who the sponsor is, who's on your team, and who you need to keep happy along the way. You've mapped out the entire social and political landscape. But now comes the big question. You know who you're driving with, but what exactly are you promising to do? What does get to California actually mean? Does it mean simply crossing the state line? Does it mean visiting Disneyland? Does it mean dipping your toes in the Pacific Ocean? If you and your sponsor and your team all have a different picture of the finish line, you're headed for disaster. You need to define the destination with absolute, undeniable clarity. And that's the job of your project scope and objectives. So let's talk about the beating heart of your charter. The project scope and the project objectives. These 2 sections are your North Star, your GPS coordinates, and your treasure map all rolled into one. They are, without a doubt, where most projects either set themselves up for a glorious victory or a slow, painful failure. First up, project scope. Think of the scope as the fence you build around your project. Everything inside the fence is your responsibility. It's the work you've agreed to do. Everything outside the fence is someone else's problem, or maybe a problem for a future project, but it is explicitly not your problem right now. This sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Let's go back to our coffee shop owner, Brenda, who wants to build a new mobile app to boost customer loyalty. What's inside the fence for her app project? The scope statement might say, this project will deliver a mobile application for iOS and Android that allows customers to view our menu, place an order for pickup, pay for their order within the app, and earn points through a digital loyalty program. Boom! That's the work. It's clear, it's concise. The team knows exactly what they need to build. But here's the secret. the part that separates amateur project managers from the pros. The most important part of your scope statement isn't what's in scope, it's what is out of scope. This is your shield. This is your defense against the most dangerous monster in all of project management. A monster called scope creep. Scope creep is that little whisper in your ear a month into the project. Sounds innocent. Sounds helpful. It sounds like your sponsor Brenda coming to you and saying, "You know, the team is doing such a great job on the app. I was just thinking, what if we added a feature where customers can get their coffee delivered? It would be huge." And your heart sinks. Because delivery integration means partnering with a third-party service, it means new payment processes, it means logistics, it means a whole new universe of complexity that you never planned for, never budgeted for, and never scheduled. This is scope creep. It's the slow, deadly addition of new features and requirements that weren't part of the original plan. Each one seems small on its own, a tiny little change, but they add up. They are the 1,000 little paper cuts that will bleed your project dry, wreck your timeline, and blow up your budget. Your out-of-scope list is how you slay this monster before it's even born. In your project charter, right under the in-scope section, you have a beautiful, glorious list titled Out of Scope. For Brenda's app, it would say things like, "This project will not include delivery service integration, a social media feed within the app, a refer a friend feature, or in-app games." Now, when Brenda comes to you with her brilliant idea for delivery, you don't have to be the bad guy who says, "No." Instead, you become the strategic partner. You can pull out the project charter that she signed and say, "Brenda, that's a fantastic idea for phase 2. As you can see, we all agreed at the start to keep delivery out of scope for this initial launch to ensure we could hit our deadline and budget. Let's add it to our list of future enhancements, and we can charter that as a separate project once the main app is successfully launched." See the difference? You're not shutting her down. You're protecting the project. You're referencing the agreement you all made when you were calm and rational, before the excitement of new ideas took over. The out-of-scope list isn't a wall. It's a focusing lens. It keeps everyone aimed at the same target. So that's the scope. It's the what. It's the boundary of the work to be done. But just building the thing isn't enough. How do you know if the thing you built was actually a success? That brings us to the second critical section, project objectives. If the scope is the what, the objectives are the why we care. They are the specific, measurable results that prove your project made a difference. They answer the question, how will we know we've won? And to define winning, we need to use another secret weapon. It's an acronym you may have heard of, but I want you to think of it as a quality control checklist for your goals. The acronym is SMART. Your objectives must be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Let's break that down with Brenda's app. A bad, non-SMART objective would be, make the coffee shop more successful. It's vague, it's impossible to measure, and it has no deadline. It's a wish, not an objective. Let's run it through the SMART checklist and turn it into a powerhouse objective. First, S for specific. Specific means we need to be crystal clear. Who is involved? What are we trying to accomplish? Let's narrow it down. We don't want to just make it successful. We want to increase customer loyalty and sales through the new mobile app. Better, much more specific. Next, M for measurable. This is the big one. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. You need a number, a metric, a way to know for sure if you hit the target. How do we measure increased customer loyalty? We could say, achieve 500 active users of the loyalty program. And for sales, generate $10,000 in revenue through the app. Now we're talking. We've gone from a vague feeling to a concrete number we can track. Then comes a for achievable. This is the reality check. Is it actually possible to get 500 active users and $10,000 in revenue for a single coffee shop? Maybe that's too high for the first few months. Maybe a more achievable goal is 200 active users and $4,000 in revenue. The in SMART forces you to have a frank conversation with your sponsor and your team about what's realistic. Setting an impossible goal is just setting yourself up for failure. You want to stretch, but you don't want to break. Fourth is R for relevant. This is the so what test. Does this objective actually matter to the bigger picture? Does generating $4,000 in app revenue support the overall business goal of increasing profitability? Yes. Does getting 200 people on the loyalty program support the goal of improving customer retention? Absolutely. The objective must be relevant to the business case we talked about earlier. It has to connect directly to the why of the project. Finally, T for time-bound. A goal without a deadline is just a dream. You need to put a clock on it. When will we achieve this? Generate $4,000 in revenue through the app within the first 3 months after launch. That T creates urgency. It creates a finish line. It focuses the mind and the team's efforts. So let's look at our final fully formed SMART objective. To achieve 200 active users on the new mobile loyalty program and generate $4,000 in direct app-based sales within the first 3 months following the app's public launch. Look at that. It's beautiful. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time-bound. There is zero ambiguity. You know exactly what success looks like, how to measure it, and when you need to achieve it by. Your team knows what they're fighting for, and your sponsor knows exactly what return they're getting on their investment. Your project charter should have between 3 to 5 of these rock-solid SMART objectives. They become the ultimate scorecard for your project. At the very end, you can hold up this list and say with complete certainty, "We did it. We won." Together, the scope and the objectives create an unbreakable bond of clarity. The scope defines the work you will do, drawing a clear fence around your playground. The objectives define the results you will deliver, giving that work a purpose and a measurable definition of success. When you get these 2 sections right in your project charter, you have done more than just plan. You have created a shared, undeniable vision of the destination. You've taken a vague idea and forged it into a concrete mission. So now you have your destination crystal clear. You know exactly what you're building and what victory looks like. But you're not taking this journey alone. On board your ship are a whole cast of characters, your crew, your passengers, your investors back on shore. And they all have their own expectations, their own fears, and their own power to help you or to sink you. And that's where we turn to one of the most critical political documents you'll ever create, your list of stakeholders. This isn't just a list of names. This is your political survival guide. It's a map of the human landscape of your project, and navigating it poorly is a faster way to sink your ship than any storm or sea monster. A stakeholder is anyone, and I mean anyone who is impacted by your project, or who has the power to impact it. They have a stake in the outcome. Think about our voyage for the Golden Compass. Your sponsor, the wealthy merchant who gave you the gold to build your ship? He's a stakeholder. Obvious. The royal cartographer who needs the new maps you create? She's a stakeholder. The end customer? Also obvious. But this is where amateurs stop. And this is where their projects begin to slowly, silently take on water. The list of stakeholders goes so much deeper. The shipbuilder who built your vessel? He's a stakeholder. If his reputation is on the line, he'll either be your biggest advocate or your loudest critic. The families of your crew back in the port town? They are absolutely stakeholders. If they don't hear from you, if they fear the worst, their panic and protests could force the king to recall your expedition. The harbor master who controls whether you can even leave the port? A stakeholder. The rival captain who's competing to find the Golden Compass first? You better believe he's a stakeholder, a negative one, but one you must watch closely. Even the tavern owner where your crew spends their money before setting sail is a stakeholder, albeit a minor one. The point is, your project doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in an ecosystem of people with competing desires, fears, and motivations. Ignoring this ecosystem is like sailing blindfolded. Your project charter is the first place you officially acknowledge who the most important players in this ecosystem are. So how do you go from this giant, overwhelming list of people to a practical tool you can actually use? You don't just list them, you map them. And the most powerful map for this is something called a power interest grid. Imagine a square, a treasure map of people. Along the bottom, you have their level of interest in your project from low to high. Along the side, you have their level of power or influence over your project, also from low to high. Every single stakeholder you identified fits somewhere in this map, and where they land tells you exactly how you need to manage them. Let's start with the top right corner. High power and high interest. These are your key players. This is the king who is funding your voyage and expects a massive return. He has the power to execute you and the highest interest in your success. You don't just send him a casual note. You manage him closely. You give him frequent, detailed updates. You anticipate his questions. You understand his motivations. If he's happy, your path is clear. If he's unhappy, your entire project is in jeopardy. In a corporate setting, this is your project sponsor, your main client, your CEO. You live and breathe to keep these people engaged and supportive. Now let's look at the top left corner, high power but low interest. These people are tricky. They have the power to sink you, but honestly, they don't care that much about your project on a day-to-day basis. Think of the head of the Royal Navy. He doesn't care about your specific treasure hunt, but he controls the shipping lanes. If you violate his regulations or get in the way of his warships, he can shut you down without a second thought. You don't need to send him daily updates about your progress. In fact, that would just annoy him. Your strategy here is to keep satisfied. You make sure you follow all his rules. You file the right paperwork. You stay off his radar. You give him exactly what he needs to not care about you so he can focus on his own priorities. In business, this might be a legal department or a regulatory body. Don't spam them, just meet their requirements and keep them happy. Next, the bottom right corner, low power but high interest. These are your biggest fans, your cheerleaders. On our voyage, this is the crew's families. They are intensely interested in your success and safety, but they have very little direct power to cancel the mission. You can't ignore them though. A happy, supportive community on shore leads to a focused, motivated crew at sea. An anxious, rumor-filled community creates distraction and political problems. So your strategy is to keep informed. You send regular, reassuring messages. You share good news. You manage their expectations. You make them feel like a valued part of the journey. This is your project team, your end users who are excited but don't hold the purse strings, or other departments who are curious about your work. A regular newsletter or a monthly town hall meeting works wonders. Finally, the bottom left corner, low power and low interest. This is the general public of the port city. They might watch you sail away, but they'll forget about you by dinner time. Your strategy here is simple, monitor. You don't need to spend much energy on them, but you should be aware of the general sentiment. If a crazy rumor starts that your ship is secretly carrying a plague, you might need to do some public relations, but most of the time you can leave this group alone. By mapping every single person on this grid, you move from a simple list of names to a sophisticated political strategy. You now know who needs a daily conversation, who needs a formal report once a month, and who just needs to be left alone. This is the secret work of all successful project managers. They don't just manage tasks and timelines, they manage people and politics. And remember that rival captain we mentioned? The one who wants you to fail. This brings up the crucial concept of negative stakeholders. Not everyone wants you to succeed. Competitors, people whose jobs might be changed by your project, departments who are fighting you for the same budget. You must identify these people. You don't write them down in the official project charter, as that would be a declaration of war. But on your private map, you mark them in red. You analyze their power, their interest, and you build a strategy to mitigate the risk they pose. You keep your information secure. You build stronger alliances with your supporters. You anticipate their moves. Because on any great voyage, there are not just storms to contend with, but pirates as well. So, in the stakeholder section of your project charter, you aren't going to publish this entire secret political map. That would be insane. Instead, you list the key stakeholders. You officially name the sponsor, the primary customer, the project manager, and any other critical players who fall into that high-power category. The charter is a public declaration. It says, these are the people with the authority and the primary interest in this project. Their voices matter most. It sets the official power structure from the very beginning. It clarifies who has the final say, who needs to be in the big meetings, and who signs off on the final treasure chest. It's the first and most important step in turning that chaotic ecosystem of people into a powerful coalition aligned toward a single, glorious purpose. Now you have your destination, you have your captain and crew, and you have a map of the political landscape. You know who your allies and enemies are. But before you can ask the king for the final bag of gold to buy supplies, you have to answer the two questions that every powerful stakeholder will ask. First, what could go wrong? And second, what are you just assuming? We're about to chart the most treacherous waters of all. The sea of uncertainty, filled with the monsters of risk and the phantom islands of assumptions. Let's talk about those monsters and phantom islands, because this right here is one of the biggest differentiators between an amateur and a professional. An amateur presents a plan that is pure sunshine and rainbows. Everything will go perfectly, the budget is exact, the timeline is flawless. A professional, on the other hand, walks into the room, puts the plan on the table, and then immediately points out all the ways it could spectacularly fail. And that, counterintuitively, is what builds incredible trust. It shows you're not naive. It shows you've thought beyond the best-case scenario. You've stress-tested your own ideas. So let's start with the monsters, the high-level risks. A risk is not a problem that's already happening. A risk is a future uncertainty that, if it happens, will have a negative impact on your project. It's the what if that keeps you up at night. For our coffee shop, the daily grind, the risks aren't we have no money. The risks are what if we run out of money? Or what if our funding gets pulled? In a full-blown project plan, you'd have a detailed risk register, a massive spreadsheet listing every conceivable thing that could go wrong. But for the charter, we're not doing that. The charter is a summary. It's the movie trailer, not the full 3-hour film. So, you want to list the top 3 to 5 major risks. The big, scary project-killing monsters. The ones that, if they surface, could sink the entire ship. How do you find them? You can think of them in categories. First, there are financial risks. The most obvious one. Project costs exceed the approved budget of $100,000 due to unforeseen construction issues or vendor price increases. This is a classic. It acknowledges that your budget is an estimate, not a guarantee, and that reality might have other plans. Second, schedule risks. These are the delays that can kill momentum and inflate costs. For our coffee shop, delay in receiving city permits for construction and food service could push our grand opening past the profitable summer season. See how specific that is. It's not just we might be late. It's why we might be late and what the consequence of that delay is. Missing the summer rush. Another one could be critical equipment, like the espresso machine, faces supply chain delays, halting our ability to complete the cafe setup on time. Third, you have operational or resource risks. These are about the doing of the work. For example, inability to hire 2 experienced baristas before the grand opening, leading to poor service quality and damage to our brand reputation from day one. This is huge. You can have the best coffee beans and the most beautiful decor, but if the person making the coffee is incompetent, you're sunk. And finally, a big one people often forget. External or market risks. Things totally outside your control. A major competitor, like a Starbucks or a Peet's Coffee, opens a new location within a 3-block radius, significantly impacting our customer traffic and initial revenue projections. You don't control what Starbucks does, but you'd be a fool not to acknowledge that they exist and could be a threat. Listing these in your charter does something powerful. It tells your sponsors, I see the dangers ahead. I'm not ignoring them. It signals that you are a captain who not only knows the destination, but has also studied the sea charts for where the krakens and leviathans might be hiding. You're not promising a storm-free journey. You're promising you'll be prepared to navigate the storm when it comes. Now let's talk about something even more subtle, but just as deadly, the phantom islands of assumptions. An assumption is anything you are holding to be true for your project to be successful, without 100% definitive proof. You are literally charting your course based on the belief that this island is there. If you're right, you can restock and sail on. If you're wrong, your project smashes against a reef that you didn't even know existed. The goal of listing assumptions in a project charter is to drag them out of the shadows and into the sunlight. It's to take these implicit beliefs and make them explicit so everyone can look at them and say, wait a minute, are we sure about that? Like risks, let's think in categories for our coffee shop. First, resource assumptions. We assume we can secure a 5-year lease on the Main Street property for no more than $4,000 per month. That's a massive assumption. What if the landlord knows it's a prime spot and wants $6,000? Your entire financial model just broke. Another one. We assume that 2 qualified baristas can be hired and fully trained within a 3-week period before opening. What if the local labor market is tight and it takes 6 weeks? Your schedule is now in jeopardy. Next, market assumptions. These are your beliefs about your customers and the world. We assume there is sufficient foot traffic and local demand for premium, artisanal coffee to meet our first-year revenue target of $200,000. This is the core assumption of the entire business. If it's wrong, nothing else matters. You need to state it. By writing it down, you force the question. How do we know this is true? Did we do a survey? Did we analyze pedestrian counts? Then there are technical or scope assumptions. We assume the building's existing electrical and plumbing systems can support our commercial-grade equipment without major, costly upgrades. Imagine the horror of discovering you need to spend an extra $15,000 to rip open walls and rewire the building because nobody checked. Stating this assumption up front prompts the project manager to say, okay, first thing we do after this charter is signed is get an electrician and a plumber in there to verify this. It turns a potential disaster into a simple to-do list item. And here is the critical link you need to understand. Almost every assumption has a corresponding risk. They are two sides of the same coin. You assume you can get the permits easily. You run the risk of permit delays. You assume your supplier is reliable. You run the risk of a supply chain failure. You assume the market rate for a barista is a certain price. You run the risk of your budget being too low. Listing your assumptions is like saying, here are the things we are betting the project on. Here are the foundations we are building this entire house upon. And if any of those foundations are actually made of sand, we need to know now, not when the walls start cracking. This section of the charter, this honest and clear-eyed look at risks and assumptions, is where you earn your stripes. It's where you move from being just a person with an idea to a leader who can execute that idea in the real world. The real world is messy, uncertain, and filled with problems. Acknowledging that isn't a sign of weakness. It is your greatest strength. It shows you're prepared. It tells your stakeholders that their investment isn't being placed on a blind bet, but on a calculated, strategic endeavor led by someone who respects reality. You've now shown them the scope, what you will and won't do. You've defined success. You've laid out the budget and the major milestones. You've identified the key players. And now you've stared into the abyss and mapped out the monsters that live there. The picture is almost complete. The entire case for this project has been made, from the glorious vision of success to the sobering realities of what could go wrong. There's only one thing left to do. One final section that takes this document from a well-structured plan into a binding contract. A declaration of authority. It's the moment the quest is officially sanctioned, the moment the project is truly born. We need to get the final approval, the official sign-off. This is the moment of truth. The signature line at the bottom of the project charter isn't just for decoration. It's the ignition switch. It's the final command in the launch sequence. Everything we've done, all the research, the planning, the stakeholder interviews, the risk assessments, it all leads to this single critical action. So who holds the pin? Primarily, it's the project sponsor. This is the person, the executive, the leader with the authority and the budget. When they sign, they are doing more than just approving a document. They are making a public and binding commitment. They are saying, I believe in this project. I am allocating the company's precious resources. It's money, it's people, it's time to make this happen. I am officially empowering the project manager to lead this charge. It's their stamp of approval that transforms the project from a possibility into a priority. Often, the project manager will co-sign the charter. This is equally symbolic and powerful. The sponsor's signature is an act of bestowing authority. The project manager's signature is an act of accepting it. It's the project manager saying, I understand the mission. I accept the responsibility for these objectives, this budget, and this timeline. I am ready to lead the team and I am accountable for the outcome. It's a handshake on paper, a formal agreement between the person funding the quest and the person leading it. Before this signature, the project charter is an exceptionally well-crafted proposal. It's a compelling argument, a detailed blueprint, a vision of a possible future. But after the ink dries, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes an official artifact. It's a sanctioned, funded, and protected entity within the organization. It's the project's birth certificate. From that moment on, the clock is officially ticking. The budget is unlocked. The team can be formally assigned. The work can truly begin. Think about it. We started this journey with nothing more than a problem or an opportunity, a vague notion floating in the ether. We took that abstract idea and we gave it a concrete identity. We gave it a name, a purpose, a reason for being. We didn't just say, let's build something. We asked, why are we building this and what does a win actually look like? We defined that victory with crystal clear objectives and measurable success criteria. Then we built the fence. We established the project scope, meticulously defining not only what was in the project but just as critically what was out. We listed the tangible deliverables, the actual things we would hand over at the end. We scanned the horizon for dangers, identifying the risks that could sink our ship, and the foundational assumptions we were counting on to hold true. We gave our project a structure in time and space. We laid out the high-level milestones, creating a roadmap from today to our destination. We put a price tag on it, establishing a budget that acts as both fuel and a financial guardrail. We identified all the key players, the stakeholders, the people who had a vested interest in our success, ensuring their voices would be heard. And finally, we appointed a leader. We named the project manager and explicitly granted them the authority to make decisions, to assemble a team, and to navigate the challenges ahead. We created a document that wasn't just a plan but a source of truth. A North Star that the entire team and the entire organization could look to when questions arose or priorities became clouded. And now with that final sign-off, the engine roars to life. The theory becomes practice. The document becomes a directive. So you might be asking, okay, I've got my sign charter.
I'm officially a go.
What now? This is the question that separates the amateurs from the pros. The charter is not the end of the planning phase. It's the end of the authorization phase. The charter is the what and the why. The next step is to build the how. This is where you develop the detailed project plan. If the project charter is the constitution of your project, a high-level document declaring its purpose, its rights, and its leaders, then the project plan is the book of laws. It's the nitty-gritty, tactical, step-by-step guide to execution. Your charter might say a key milestone is to develop and test the new software module. Your project plan will have hundreds of lines detailing every single task required to get that done. Write the code for the login feature. Design the user interface. Conduct unit testing. Perform user acceptance testing. And so on. It will assign each task to a specific person and give it a specific deadline. The charter gives you the authority to go to New York. The project plan is the turn-by-turn GPS navigation that gets you there, street by street. Understanding this distinction is absolutely crucial. The charter authorizes the voyage, the plan charts the course. But here's the most important thing I can tell you in this entire series. This isn't just for people with project manager in their job title. This isn't just for building skyscrapers or launching software for a Fortune 500 company. The project charter is a tool for anyone anywhere who wants to turn a serious idea into a reality. It is a universal framework for success. Are you and your partner planning a wedding? A simple one-page charter can get you both aligned on the budget, the number of guests, the overall vibe, and who is responsible for what before you spend a single dollar. It can save you from countless arguments down the road. That's a project charter. Are you thinking of starting a podcast or a YouTube channel on the side? Don't just buy a microphone and hope for the best. Draft a charter. What is your goal? Is it 1,000 subscribers in 6 months? Is it to land one paying sponsor? What's your budget for equipment? What are the risks? The biggest risk is usually giving up after 5 episodes. How will you mitigate that? By defining your success criteria up front, you give yourself a reason to keep going. Are you organizing a fundraiser for your kids' school? Planning a major family reunion? Trying to finally write that novel you've been talking about for years? Every single one of these is a project. And every single one of them has a dramatically higher chance of success if you take 30 minutes to create a charter. It forces you to move beyond wishful thinking and into the realm of intentional action. It takes your dream and gives it a backbone. In the age of sailing, a charter was a legal document that commissioned a voyage. It gave the ship's captain the authority to hire a crew, buy provisions, and set sail for a specific port to deliver a specific cargo. Without that charter, a ship was just a collection of wood and sails sitting in a harbor. It had potential but no purpose. The charter gave it a mission. It transformed the vessel into a venture. That is what this document does for your idea. It's the formal declaration that you are no longer just sitting in the harbor, dreaming of distant lands. You have a map. You have a destination. You have the full authority to embark on your journey. It is the single most powerful tool for turning the chaos of a new idea into the focused, unstoppable momentum of a real project. It's the line between someday and day one. So now I want you to think. What's the project you've been putting off? The idea you haven't known how to start? That's your first charter. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it on paper. Define your victory. Give yourself permission to set sail.